Okay. Welcome in, everyone. I'm glad to be here. We'll be getting started in just a moment. I'm going to let people join the live stream before I get rolling here. Let's see here. Oh, there's my comment section. As always, let's do a little roll call. Where are you guys tuning in from? I like to hear where in the world folks are coming from. Anjani says hi. Hello. From Danielle saying hello. Good morning from Arizona. Now here we go. Now we're getting some juicy data. It always makes me feel good to hear when people are like, "Oh, really? You're coming from Spain?" Like that's crazy. That's so interesting. From Central Alabama. All right. Welcome. From Wisconsin. I'm sorry that you have to cheer for such a terrible football team. I'm just kidding. It's actually me that has to cheer for the terrible football team. Michigan, from Denmark, from Costa Mesa, from South Louisiana, from Sedona. That picture looks like Sedona. I've been there. It's really beautiful. There was a chapel that I went to, like up in the rocks, like I want to say like Episcopal or maybe Catholic, but it's like this chapel built into the rocks that I had a really, I'd say like a very memorable time visiting and sitting in silence there. Really a good memory. All right, from Naples, Louisville, Kentucky, from LA, from Raleigh, from Denver, and from Slovenia, Northwest Florida, Charleston, South Carolina. All right, the Garden State. That's New Jersey, right? Sweden. I remember that movie, Garden State. South Carolina, San Francisco, Norway, New York, New York City, Northern Michigan, from New England, Alberta, Canada, Ohio. Hey, from Ashland, Oregon. I was just there. I was visiting my brother and sister-in-law. Loved it. It was so beautiful out there. Wow. It's like, it's a magical little place that I feel like not a lot of people know about. Or maybe I just didn't know about it. From the UK, been listening to you since you lived in Baltimore. Awesome. From Romania, from Raleigh, from Tampa, Northern Michigan, UK, Serbia, Chicago. Oh my God, I love this. London. Sedona, Arizona says hello. There was a crystal shop that I visited in Sedona. There's probably lots of them. But it was a very memorable, like big crystal shop with like a bookstore kind of connected to it. I also really liked that. Hi, Adam from Sultana. Hello. From Delaware, from Colorado, New York City, the Netherlands, from Milwaukee. I love this. This is so cool. From the UK. Oh my God, it's just coming at me so fast. I don't know what to do. Okay. Well, we've done a little bit of roll call. It is really nice to be here with you this morning. Today we are going to unpack. Well, hello, I'm Adam from Nightlight Astrology. You all probably know that, but I am really excited because I think this is the biggest new moon of 2025 in terms of let's call it the symbolic load of the moment is big. It's got a Mercury Cazimi at the heart of the sun, coming off from a Mercury-Uranus opposition. Sun, moon, last degrees of Scorpio, all opposing Uranus, last degrees of Scorpio, coming off from a grand water trine. 2 more grand water trines about to re-engage. I mean, it's a special new moon. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at the symbolism of the new moon first, just kind of cover it from that big picture archetypal perspective, point out some things that are obvious and maybe some that aren't so obvious, And then what we're going to do is turn our attention to horoscopes. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be unpacking the dyads. So when I read for Aries, we're also going to be reading for Libra. And we're just going to take the same horoscope and flip-flop house perspectives, because this horoscope is in opposition across two houses, which means we're going to tell you what it means if the new moon is in 1 for a Scorpio or 7 for a Taurus. And we'll talk about the oppositional tension from Uranus given both houses. And the interpretation will vary slightly based on which house we're putting the new moon in versus Uranus, but we're going to flip-flop them and explore them. We're also going to use the Purushartas to help us understand some of the backdrop of what these transits are about, philosophically speaking. The Purushartas tell us about the core concerns of human life that exist behind the mundane topics that may come about through the opposition. So, for example, the 1st and the 7th house, broadly speaking, represent self and other. There's a lot of relational dynamics, questions of character development and personal evolution that take place in the 1st house, relationships in the 7th. Those mundane topics are going to be a part of our coverage. And then we're going to look a level deeper at the Purushartas and say, what is Dharma or Kama? What are these two areas of human life doing with one another through this opposition? That can be another way of meaningfully holding the experience right now. So we'll take a look at those as well. At the start of today's talk, I will be promoting the Kickstarter campaign. And then after we go through our kind of broad symbolic coverage, I'll re-echo the Kickstarter campaign. And then at the end, I'll re-echo it before we go into a period of Q&A, just sort of sprinkling in throughout calls to donate. So you know what's coming. You guys ready? I've got my dark chocolate. Let's go. We're going to do it. Okay. So, first of all, what I want to make really clear at the beginning is that at the end of the year, I do typically around 1 live stream per week as a way of generating enthusiasm and support for the Kickstarter campaign. What is the Kickstarter campaign? I'm going to take you over to the Kickstarter channel. In the comment section, I'm going to post the link to the Kickstarter. You can find that streaming there. You can also find it on the website. If you simply go to nightlightastrology.com, you'll see a Kickstarter tab at the top of the website that will also take you over to the Kickstarter campaign. This is our 12th annual Kickstarter campaign. To give you an idea of just how crazy a creature of habit and discipline I am, I have been creating daily content without missing a day, or not many anyway, for 13 years. 12 of them have been supported by a Kickstarter campaign at the end of the year. So the goal of this channel is to provide astrological feedback, education, insight, guidance, but really of the kind that can be paired with self-care and a spiritual practice in life. I want this channel to be a place where you can grow spiritually alongside of your interest in astrology, so that healing work, that inner life that we're tending and developing is wed nicely to the way the content is done on this channel. I have a background in yoga. I have a long background in working with plant medicine, a long background as a preacher's kid, grew up in the Christian faith. For me, astrology is part of an ongoing daily conversation with spirit, with God, with the gods and goddesses. And so the content production year-round comes from that space. And I'm sure most of you who are here know that that's the value behind all of the work. But at this point in the journey, there is a huge team of people that are now behind the scenes. There's 12 staff at Nightlight. There's a full-time social media person who curates the social media content and distribution of this work 7 days a week now. We are now facilitating the development of other astrologers through our school, through monthly horoscopes and through monthly overviews, through weekend wisdom series. We're trying to use this space to grow other astrologers. We have a staff of students who take donation-based readings or affordable readings at sliding scales through our website. So everything at Nightlight is about trying to make astrology easy of access for people who might be hurting, all the way to people who can afford our going rates for all of our education and our programs. But what motors all of it is people supporting the free content on this channel at the end of the year through the Kickstarter. Whether that's a $5 donation or a $10 donation, all of it matters. The backer total matters to us. We're trying to get to 2,043 backers by New Year's. I'm going to take you over to, let me just do this really quick. I'm going to take you over to the Kickstarter campaign page. And I'm going to briefly tell you about the rewards, and then we'll get into our talk for the day. So we're doing really well. We're just a couple of days in, and we're already at 121 backers. Our base funding goal, it's all or nothing funding with Kickstarter. So we set a very low number that's not actually where we need to land, but it's basic enough so that if we were to have a really bad year for some reason, we wouldn't lose it all. So that basic amount, we're already on a nice pace to funding that very basic goal. But we know that if we land at about what we did last year, which was 2,042 backers, and we grow the support to even just a backer more, we're going to land in the range that we need to fund a staff of 12 people, a certain amount that's delegated or that's taken out for taxes, et cetera, et cetera. So if you appreciate the channel, donate, support it. It helps all that we do. It's a part of, this is how I earn my livelihood. This is how I support a staff. This is how I support a growing field of astrologers who come through our programs and so forth. Now you scroll down, you're going to find that there's some really good rewards available. Just some basic stuff. There's an astrology calendar that will show you all of the major transits of the year day by day that I'm going to be tracking on the channel. So you can know where the content is heading in advance if you want to. And that's really fun. That's a $25 donation. I have a special talk. It's basically a kind of a contemplative guided meditation type of talk on the value of silence and developing a practice of quiet prayer, meditation, whatever you want to call it. So that's a fun talk that you can get. The Astrology of 2026 is a very popular offering. This is an exclusive talk that I do taking a look at all of the biggest events of the year ahead. I don't release this on my channel. It's the only place you'll find a full overview of the next year that I do. So you can pick that up when you donate. The Oracle Within is a guided visualization and meditation that I have created for the year ahead. So you can pick that up. These are just like some basic things. My next book I'm starting, I just finished a book. I'll be starting another new book, probably at least by June or July of next year. I'll be starting in on that. If you want the chapter by chapter release of the first draft, you can read it as it's being written. That's a cool gift. Year ahead horoscope reading. So this is about 6 hours worth of content covering the horoscope for your year ahead. This is going to look at all of the biggest events of the year ahead for your rising sign or your sun sign. All 12 signs are covered. It's about 6 hours worth of content. I don't release that on the channel. It's exclusive to the Kickstarter. Then you have a number of different previous master classes. Those are about 10 to 12 hours worth of content on specific topics in astrology. You can check those out. There's one on the lunar nodes, the fixed stars, zodiacal releasing, the outer planets, tracking the outer planets and transits. There's an astrology for complete beginners course. This is ideal for people who have zero background in astrology, who are like, what is this? Good place to start, about 12 hours worth of content. There's an Ask 3 Horary Questions reading, which allows you to, throughout the year, send me 3 different horary questions, and I will respond to those horary questions after I've analyzed the chart by email, and you can use them whenever you want within a year. The year ahead mini reading is a personalized birth chart recording that I do for you, looking at what I think is the biggest transit of the next year in your birth chart, what it is, when it's going to happen, what I think it will entail. Those are the only personalized readings I do. I'm not doing readings anymore outside of classrooms. And so that is a kind of a special gift in that way. You scroll down a little bit more, you're going to find that all of our masterclass archives are bundled. So if you want the 2025, 24, or 23 masterclass series that I did, those are all available for really good discounts. You can check out all of the individual classes. They're all around 30 hours worth of content. There's a new masterclass in 2026 on the decans you can check out. That starts in January. There's a new guild membership. If you're already in the Nightlight community, that guild membership is going to be a great place for ongoing study of more intermediate advanced topics, a lot of chart practice, live clients, A lot of good stuff there. My wife's first and second year herbal apprenticeship programs we include. And then you can find our class bundles. These are the absolute best thing we offer. We only offer it once a year through the Kickstarter. You can bundle 1, 2, 3, or 4 classes together. And that allows you to take our year 1, year 2, year 3 horary program, masterclass series any year, guild membership any year. You can also take Ashley's classes if you want through that. So those bundles are going to save you over 50% off on the cost of our courses. So those are all of our best deals. Thank you for letting me take a moment to tell you about the Kickstarter campaign. It means a lot to me to have your support. All right. On that note, let's turn our attention to the real-time clock and make sure you pop over there while we're live today. The whole idea is to drum up some support while we're live. So if you're watching this, you're getting something good out of it, consider popping over there during the live stream and drop a donation in the hat, so to speak. All right. Well, this is, I think, the biggest new moon of the year. When I am in this time of year, I'm always writing out my content arc for the year ahead as I study all of the transits for the year ahead. I always do that the last 40 days of the year during the Kickstarter. And I remember last year sitting here during this Kickstarter time and looking at this new moon and being like, wow, the last new moon of the year packs a punch. Holy crap. Let me show you why. I mean, without getting into like comparisons with all of the other, all of the other moons on the year, is my drawer is not going to work. Okay. You can see the new moon here. I'm just going to kind of circle it with my cursor because it's not letting me highlight, which is strange. Anyway, you can see that the new moon is forming, and the formation of this new moon will come in. Let me go to, let's get it exactly aligned. Let me try to see if I can draw one more time. Nope, it's not letting me. No, I don't know. It's strange. Okay. Well, I'll figure it out later. So you can see the new moon is forming here. This is about 1 in the morning tonight into tomorrow morning. And you can see that Mercury is conjoined with the sun and the moon at the time of the new moon. And that conjunction of Mercury to the sun is happening in a close enough degree range that it's considered Cazimi. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. But that Cazimi is then happening at the same time that the new moon is forming. And all 3 planets are just about a degree, just a shade under a degree or over a degree off from an exact opposition to Uranus and Taurus. So, the opposition from these 3 planets to Uranus, in addition to the Mercury Cazimi, is toning the new moon. The reason that this is so significant is that all of these are powerful aspects on their own, but when they happen at the time of a new moon, it's a bit it's not only stronger or more emphasized in the moment, but it also has a way of the seed of this moment carries throughout the duration of the entire moon cycle, which it's like, if you think of an event like a little stone being thrown in a pond, and then it has like some ripples. And this would be a stone with some significant ripples on its own, but add to it that it's a new moon, and that the signature of a new moon has a way of carrying like a much bigger stone being thrown in the water, that the ripples carry out much further in our time-space, perception of reality, that the signature of this new moon is therefore it's a much bigger stone being thrown in, to follow the analogy. The ripples are much more significant. The impact, duration, and spread of the event carries much more momentum and significance symbolically than it otherwise would. And that's what makes it such a special new moon. A new moon exactly opposite Uranus with a Cazimi at the center of it. I mean, that's really unique. I mean, there's a lot of unique signatures in astrology. Every year, there's always some new moons or full moons that are pretty epic in terms of the things happening right around them or at the same time. But I don't think I've seen this before in terms of an exact Cazimi at the exact time of a Uranus opposition. so tight, around a new or full moon. Like it really is very powerful and very unique. So what I want to do today, the other thing that's important to mention, excuse me, before I go on, is that this new moon is coming within a 3-degree range of the grand water trine. And that grand water trine is being reactivated by Mercury's retrograde and pretty soon by Venus's forward movement through Scorpio. So we have a couple more iterations of the grand water trine. And this new moon is also participating in that grand water trine still. It's still within 3 degrees of the sun separating from the grand water trine. So Mercury's heading right back into it. That's another layer to this. The final layer is the fact that these planets are anaretic. Now, anaretic is a modern concept. The ancient word for the ancient concept has to do with planets that have the power to bring about death in a situation where a forecast or a prediction involves death. There are killing planets. So the word anaretic being used as a killing degree at the 29th degree, as far as I've understood from both my own research and some of my trusted colleagues, is that the use of anaretic specifically as a difficult last degree of a sign is modern. But the precedent in the tradition comes from the fact that the last degrees of every sign are the bounds of the malefics. So it's not just the last degree, it's actually the last couple of degrees of every sign whose host is either Mars or Saturn. In this case, it's Saturn. So even if the concept of an anaretic degree is relatively new, there is a precedent in the tradition. There's a way of looking at the last degrees as difficult that is there. So I think it's just, the concept is just fine. I don't have any issue with it. But what I will say is that the meaning of an anaretic degree tends to be sensationalized and dramatized in ways that are pretty negative and not very nuanced. So we want to say a few things about that before we keep going. First of all, the final degrees of a sign, if you think of them in terms of the Indian philosophical counterparts of creator, maintainer, and destroyer gods. I've heard it put this way before. When I was first practicing astrology, I heard a Vedic astrologer talking about this, and I really appreciated it. Haven't forgotten it. That you can think about cardinal, fixed, and mutable signs in similar ways: creation, maintenance, and destruction. But destruction in the material world, it doesn't have to be like evil or dark or malicious. Not any more than fall or winter is, right? We don't look at fall and winter and say, oh, nature, it's so evil for destroying summer and spring. But if the word is not it's not like, it's an appropriate word too. The force, if you think of what the forces of autumn or fall and winter are doing, they're bringing death. They're bringing the destruction of life and light. However, what's not accurate is that destruction is a living force. So sometimes we think like death or destruction or winter or we think of those things as like a void, but it's better to think of them as a living force, but a living, like it's better to think of them, for example, like yin, which has a destructive element when it comes to what it does or how it acts on light, life, plants, warmth. It brings the absence of those things, but the absence of those things isn't just a vacuum. It's an actual living presence that has creative value and potential in it. So the last degree of a sign, if you think about it as just killing things and ending things, it lacks that kind of nuance of what death and impermanence and winter do in the cycle of life, right? Within the cycle of life, they're a very fertile, and like, for example, for ancient astrologers, winter was a time of great wetness and moisture. And although there's death in the air, there's also just this like deep drawing in of fertile energy from the yin that's like it's infusing itself in the earth that then proliferates in the spring and summer. So another way of thinking about destructiveness in the paradigm of astrology is to think of it as a different kind of creative force. Of course, we try to capture that with cliches like death and rebirth or something. But usually what we mean by that is that good things come after bad things. And that's not nuanced enough for the way ancient astrologers. That's why I don't love the phrase death and rebirth, though, sometimes it's convenient. There's really much more of a kind of like a gravitational center that's pulling everything inward, and the outer manifestation often fades or falls apart as things are being drawn inward. And it can feel like there's a destructive element, but there's also something very fertile happening. And so I think it's important to just think a little bit more deeply about what, so now you have a really interesting signature because you have a new moon that plants the seed for a new cycle, but that's coming at the late part of a sign. What to speak of the Mercury Cazimi or the opposition to Uranus, which are also powerful signatures. But that alone, that kind of anaretic quality, the late power of the yin to move things inward, to draw things to a close. Maybe there's some feeling that things are falling apart, but it is this falling apart that sets the tone for a new cycle or a new chapter because it's a new moon. I'd like to think of this very simply. Let me give you an example of the entrance into the balsamic moon phase in your progressed lunation chart. I've seen this occur so many times. It's such a repeatable pattern. When people enter the balsamic phase of a progressed lunation cycle in their birth chart, it will often coincide with a death or a loss or a release of some kind. But by the new moon, that death, loss, or release has been seamlessly connected to an exciting new chapter that is getting started in the wake of that loss. So, for example, when I went into my progressed lunar phase, our yoga studio closed. Just naturally, by the forces of necessity and fate and destiny, it was time to close our brick and mortar yoga studio. That was the entrance into my balsamic phase. We didn't know what was next. I didn't know what was next. There was a sense of the inevitability of loss or letting go of the studio, of impermanence and change, and a kind of mystery as to why this was happening and where it would lead us. That's very balsamic. A balsamic moon is very similar to a new moon at the end of a progressed lunation cycle, right? Because an anaretic new moon like this one that we're dealing with is very similar to the kind of creativity that a balsamic moon will usher in the progressed lunation. So by the time that my progressed new moon has just recently formed, by the way. So that's I could tell you more interesting stories about that. But a simple way of thinking about what you might notice right now, we'll get to horoscopes here, which will hopefully become much more specific, is that the late degree nature of the new moon in Scorpio can bring about the endings of things. And they may happen rather dramatically or suddenly, thanks to the opposition to Uranus. Sudden plot twists or unexpected turns of circumstance or fate that may appear rapidly or dramatically. I would give another example would be, think of all of the people who, when COVID came rather unexpectedly, had to shut down their businesses because suddenly, people were quarantined. A lot of people we knew had to close their businesses in DC when we were living there because it was untenable. They couldn't pay rent any longer. That's a hard transition that's unexpected, that's sudden, that you weren't necessarily planning for, that represents a death, a loss, or a release, or a letting go. And yet most people, at least most people in my circle, when something like that happens, if you're on a spiritual path in life, you have to kind of double down on your faith in such a moment. And you have to say to yourself, okay, I didn't see this coming. This wasn't a twist or turn I was anticipating, but I trust that it's here for a reason. And born out of that trust and faith that there is a reason and a season for everything, even unexpected endings, the healthiest possible seeds of the next chapter are planted in such moments. So that's what I would recommend right now for anyone who experiences sudden dramatic endings or shifts or turns that feel like they're not taking you in the direction you were anticipating, to have faith in such a moment, because the faith that goes with the unexpected ending becomes the quality of the seed that brings the next chapter. So with Mercury opposite Uranus at the heart of the sun at this moment, I would also watch for those kind of unexpected and dramatic moments of intellectual, mental, or communicative breakthrough. When someone says something to you that really changes your heart and mind in an unexpected way in a relationship, when someone breaks news to you you weren't anticipating, when you get that sudden or unexpected communication at work that you're being demoted or promoted, this is a moment where when Mercury's at the heart of the sun and all of this is opposite Uranus, unexpected forms of communication, unexpected ideas, unexpected thoughts or conversations can arrive. And they will probably have quite a dramatic impact and could shift or change the direction of things dramatically because of that late anaretic signature again. Handling these things with grace and with faith and with trust. Much better in a situation like this than with these fixed signs to try to get controlling or rigid or resistant. These are moments that are, in a sense, you could say they're trying to create openings for us. Uranus loves to create more freedom, more opportunity. Uranus likes to break the mold, which is why we call Uranus a planet of revolution, of freedom, of originality. Uranus likes to take us out of convention and habit. And with that signature in the air, but with the late anaretic degree, we may not be able to see how things that are happening right now are actually here to provide us with greater freedom, flexibility, creativity, and happiness. But it's hard to see when that opening is coming in a way that feels like the rug's getting pulled out from underneath us. It's hard to see and trust that this is a creative opening that's actually been designed for your soul. But how am I supposed to feel that when it feels like normalcy or stability is being taken away from me? So these are all things to keep in mind. Faith, trust, surrender, all really good tools to utilize right now when unexpected changes come. Also, the potential for emotional catharsis. These late planets in late Scorpio, Venus is in Scorpio right now, to see below the surface, to have a keener, deeper awareness of what is true or real in relationships, in yourself, at work, wherever the Scorpio house is in your chart. So as that deeper awareness, as you can tap into it right now, so too can you create some sudden changes or breakthroughs. It's like I can think of how many times, I would go to an ayahuasca ceremony, and for me, happened to me in my first ceremonies, but over time, as I got more used to the experience and the work became a little, deeper and subtler and less sort of dramatic, less screaming. Then I would watch people who are newer going through it for the first time, and it was really instructive because I would think to myself, right now, they're going through something that they can't help but feel is terrifying. They're getting in touch with truths that are really hard to look at. And, but what they don't know is that what they're going through right now is one of the most liberating events that they'll ever experience in their life. And in a day from now, in 2 weeks from now, that realization that this was one of the most liberating things that they've ever done or experienced will set in. That's like a new moon opposite Uranus. The moment of the new moon, the opposition to Uranus, oh, little harrowing. But as the month goes on, as the months go on, you'll look back to this moment and you'll say, that was the beginning of a really special moment of understanding, of greater awareness that revolutionized things, that set me free, that created a breakthrough. So all such positive things at the end of the day. But in the moment, again, that it's heavy. It's like these are some heavy things. I love that, there's a trickster quality in the air with Mercury opposite Uranus in particular. I want to tell you a funny story because it's like embarrassing, but it's a great like Mercury opposite Uranus story. So people when I do like Q&As, people often ask me what I think about astrological magic and stuff like that. And I will often say that I'm always kind of careful about is any kind of use of astrology and magic that's very forceful and willful and egotistical and all about getting things that are maybe superficial, like get me money or get me wealth or get me power or help me beat my enemy or all of this stuff. And again, like these are just my own subjective feelings that I stay away from that kind of stuff personally. But sometimes I can be a little rigid, and so it was just really funny because I had a situation that came up. I was talking about this with my therapist just recently because he's a Jungian and we love exploring this kind of stuff together. And in this situation, I recognized that I was dealing with some people who were not coming from a great place. And this was so unintentional on my part. Like I didn't even realize that I did it. I unintentionally invoked someone that they know that is no longer with us. And I invoked something that they had once said as a way of very unconsciously sort of protecting myself because I knew that they would respect the words of this person who had passed. And I didn't even realize I did it. It was so like it was happening on a level that was not so conscious. So then afterward, I felt really guilty about it. I was like, oh man, I feel like I kind of cast a spell on them. like I feel like I very unconsciously like invoked the presence of someone who had passed and something that they said to protect myself from being taken advantage of. Okay. Now, maybe you're listening to this and you're going, well, what's wrong with that? That sounds just like smart or intelligent. But the way I process it was I felt like I had been a little deceptive and manipulative. And I didn't like that feeling. I didn't like how I felt afterward. So I sat down. I sat down with the I Ching and I asked the I Ching, why did I do that so unconsciously? Or like, how did that happen? I was trying to understand how that just happened without me even really thinking so much about it. And then I asked, like, it felt like, in a way, it felt like I was just protecting myself. But in another way, I felt like I did something a little manipulative, like a little bit of like magic or something. So anyway, I can't go into the whole details of the I Ching reading, but the I Ching reading came back and it was really fascinating because specifically the line that I got was about what I love about Benabel Wen's translation is she invokes a lot of the ancient shamanic origins of the I Ching in its history. And one of the meanings of the line that came back in my reading was about what are called binding spells in the ancient Chinese tradition. And it was so fascinating and so the first level of the reading was sort of like, yeah, you sort of unintentionally cast a binding spell by invoking someone who had passed. I was like, Well, I didn't I didn't mean to. I wasn't trying to manipulate anything. It just sort of happened. It was very unconscious. Anyway, then the reading went on to basically expose me to a level at which magic works in a very ordinary, mundane way through things just like that, through little psychic manipulations. And it gave me an awareness of the presence of the trickster archetype in life. That in a way, it's not even just magic. Another way of thinking about it is the trickster archetype and the way the trickster moves very secretively and quickly in situations at times that we could also describe creatively or poetically as kind of like spell casting. And then the I Ching reading, it went really deeply into words and the way we speak and the way we talk and how spells and magic are at work in it all the time. And I started thinking about Mercury. And it was just so illuminating. And at the end of the day, what it did more than anything else was it really helped me to soften my position about magic and to realize that, there's a very regular sort of everyday way that the trickster, the archetype of the magician, Hermes, is sort of at work in things like speech that don't even necessarily require spell books or incantations or amulets or whatever. And it sort of helped me to be a little less rigid and puritanical, a little bit more open and accepting about the presence of magic as just a basic archetypal reality. This is a long-winded story, but it has a point. So, all of that happened for me just very recently as Mercury turned retrograde and got within 3 degrees of the opposition to Uranus. And I was like, well, that was profound. What a profound Mercury opposite Uranus moment of learning and awakening and brilliant instruction from the I Ching. The point is, right now, one of the main ways that learning and growth and spiritual evolution can take place is through the sort of invisible movements of the trickster, those funny ways that you say something you didn't mean to say, or the funny ways in which you get caught up in a white lie, or that funny way in which you send an email to the wrong person, by mistake or something, or you put your foot in your mouth. And it seems like on one level like a moral flaw, but on another level, it becomes the pathway through which the trickster, the magician, can illuminate or can be instructive. And so I would watch for that right now, because with this new moon opposite Uranus, the unexpected twists and turns can also have a very distinct kind of magician trickster quality in them. And that means that things are likely not, with the trickster, things are always a little morally ambivalent. Exactly like I was like, well, I think I just protected myself, but I think I just accidentally cast the spell. I don't even know how to cast the spell, but I think I just did. So watch for the trickster and the ambiguities morally that could come up in the cycle ahead might be really rich, fertile ground for learning and growth. When we want to judge someone or something according to simple, pure principles, but it's not that simple. That's a opposition to Uranus as well, because did you know that Mercury and Uranus in modern astrology by modern astrologers, I don't really love the octaves theory, but they're frequently compared as octaves of each other, Mercury and Uranus. Richard Tarnas famously talks about Prometheus in his book Cosmos and Psyche in relation to Uranus as an archetype, and he talks about the trickster. So both the Promethean trickster qualities of Uranus and of Mercury are being paired together right now, and that means things may not be as morally black and white as we proceed down the path of learning in the month ahead that we want them to be. And I think that's good for us. Sometimes we have to look into the mirror and realize that reality, divinity, is beyond morality. It's not that it's amoral or doesn't care about morality. It's just that it can't be put into a box of morality either, which is why we have archetypes like the trickster that have both good and bad woven into them. And we have animals that represent the combination of these qualities, like a fox. A fox is such a magical, interesting creature, and like a thief. like stealing the chickens or whatever. So we have to have those ambiguous parts of our psyche that are facilitating our growth in life. Because if the part of us that thinks we always know better, that thinks that principles are what lead us to enlightenment, that part has to get confused. Its moral self-righteousness and certainty has to get thrown off by the trickster's ambiguities, by the magic of Hermes, if we are to become something more than like dogmatic sojourners. We have to become something more nuanced than that. To become a soul, or to be in touch with our soul, let's say, means to be in touch with complexities, morally and spiritually. So again, my story, just a simple example, but these things are at work in the new moon. So watch for them, be aware of them, and be aware of if things are like kind of like weird, or things are nutty, or a little things can feel so quirky around Mercury and Uranus. And stay curious, stay interested. Don't come to quick conclusions about what's happening, because we got a whole cycle to unpack it under. And it's usually the quick knee-jerk interpretations that kill the messenger. An owl shows up in your dream. You sprint to the Ted Andrews book and you go, oh my God, what do owls mean? Right? Well, then it's like taxidermy. You've just stuffed the live living dream animal and put it on your shelf somewhere. James Hillman said that famously. And we don't want to be killing dream animals by interpreting them. We want to let them be living messengers. If a message is showing up right now, its first appearance is often unclear. It's like, there's something here, there's something moving, there's something shifting, but I don't know, I can't tell. Resist the urge to sprint to the Ted Andrews book. Although I love that book too, So let the messenger convey what it has to say in ways that are truly revolutionary, because they take us deeper into mystery, into ambiguity, nuance, complexity, depth. That's the Mercury Cazimi in Scorpio. The only way to resolve certain things that are so deep down is through pathways that are not clear and simple. Wouldn't it be nice if we could take some of the most complicated parts of our psyche and just bring them up to the top like we're fishing, just reel them right in, plop them in a net and go, okay, I'm done. Most of the time, to get to the bottom of things in Scorpio, you've got to actually dive in and like become more of a fish rather than fishing something out. All right, well, this is a good question. Can a trickster be benevolent? Yes, of course. Tricksters are often benevolent, right? Like, and that's the thing, is that they have ambiguity behind them. Like, a trickster is not necessarily trustworthy, but they're often helpful creatures, or allies on the path of a hero, for example. Yeah, there's so many famous examples. Like, a good trickster energy in Lord of the Rings is Gollum. He's a little bit more nefarious and a little darker and has a bit of a villain in him, but he also has trickster energy and often is very helpful. Now, he's fighting two different parts of himself, the good part and the bad part, and it's that ambiguous blend of the good and bad part in Gollum that often show up as helpful but also tricky. Right? So, yeah, someone else is saying, why do you have a problem with magic? I don't have, it's not that I have a problem with magic, is that there's a certain caricature of magic that I think is problematic, where it's like, I'm guided by the ancient Vedic philosophy, for example, that is always giving us warnings about unhealthy attachment. And so all of the ancient astrologers said, when good fortune or bad fortune happen in life, it's best to just, when good fortune comes, say thank you and let it flow through. When bad fortune comes, you say thank you, you let it flow through. And there's specific warnings about trying to manipulate fortune, like trying to get things. Like, what can I do to get a car? What can I do to get power or success? which are attachments to a kind of fortune that in this world, according to this ancient philosophy, will keep you chained and attached to suffering. So I'm very weary of like the kind of magic that is about attachment to material power or material wealth or greed or status. And there's a whole lot of that and egotistical problems around that. So that's where I come from with that. But again, like I was just hopefully explaining, there's room for me to soften. There's room for me to grow always. You know, I'm still learning like everyone else. Yeah. Okay. My dog, Ashley's home, and my dog really wants to get out of here, so I'm going to let her out. Come on. She's like, as soon as mom's home, she's like, oh yes, I got to go see her. Oh, I like this comment a lot. I think the trickster is chaotic neutral. People with tons of Gemini are very intelligent. I love talking to them. They're great with their hands and cognition, but they lie about everything. Well, I don't know if that's true, but I get what you're saying. I like the chaotic neutral illusion. That's really cool. Is desiring to be in your own home attachment or need? I have no idea. It's different. It's different for every person. I don't think there's anything wrong with desiring a home or shelter, you know. And there's nothing wrong with praying for that either, you know. I'm talking about something very specific that I run across a lot in this field over a long period of time. And it really really boils down to a level of you know, ego and desire and attachment that I personally just have to stay away from. But again, there's always like my understanding of the reality includes everything for a reason, right? And so there's always room to grow and understand. Anyway. All right, well, let's go to saying goodbye to Hilda. Yeah. Another thing that, like, just on a mundane level, this new moon with Mercury Cazimi opposite Uranus can indicate our transitions of power or leadership. The Mercury at the heart of the sun, excuse me, can grant, it's often talked about as being given the seal of the king in ancient astrology, which means that Mercury, the messenger, is granted like the diplomatic power of the president or king to act on the king's behalf in some kind of negotiation, for example. So when Mercury comes to the heart of the sun, there's often a moment where a transition or transfer of power or a blessing or granting of some kind of resource or power from an authority figure is given. And what I find really interesting is the opposition to Uranus suggests that there could be power struggle involved, or that the transfer or administration of power or the giving or granting of voice or power could be one that's very provocative to other people. Like when someone gets promoted from within a company and people feel like they were overlooked, and then there's internal division because everyone's pissed off that someone was promoted and they weren't. That would be very appropriate, that kind of scenario for this new moon. Another instance of this would be where someone in a position of power or leadership is, let's say, something about their past or some secret dealings are exposed, and that it dramatically changes their reputation, or it could even get them kicked out of a position. Scandal, disclosure of secret or private or hidden informations in the lives of leaders or famous people that creates backlash publicly, socially, or institutionally. All of that would be very appropriate for a new moon like this. The other thing that could happen is becoming empowered to create some kind of revolutionary change. When you get the courage from within your heart and the universe opens some doors for you to creatively do something magical and powerful, but also, it might ruffle some feathers. Um, for example, I think sometimes within fields, people have breakthroughs and publish a paper or produce a new product or say something public within a field, and it has massive ripple effects, and they're empowered to speak or do something, but its instant effect is dramatic and revolutionary. Now think about all of those things in an internal way. What are you being empowered with on the level of your own heart, soul, emotions, psychology, and how are realizations or insights you're having facilitating a kind of instant revolution in your own psyche? That would be a kind of internal psychological feel of the same dynamic. Okay, well, we have broken all of these elements down. Okay, how do we become a fish? For me, it has to do with flow states. Like, how do I go deep into something rather than try to take something and interpret it from the unconscious? But how do I kind of dive into the unconscious? For me, flow states. So I have several go-to flow states. For me, the most likely place where I'm going to get in touch with something and commune with it, and it's going to talk to me or impart something with me that I can't get to consciously through attempts to interpret or attempts to grasp or grab. It's flow states. Like, I might be working out for an hour and I'm in a flow, and that flow, the body shuts, you're in the body to the point that the mind shuts down. And then something paradoxically comes up in the mind, some understanding, because the body is a great place to go to become a fish. Anything animal like in the zodiac, the scorpion, they're instinctual, they're libidinal, these signs, that the animal signs especially, that kind of tend to provide wisdom to the extent that we're able to honor and acknowledge bodily existence. Dance is a flow state. Yoga, physical asana could be a flow state, but also sitting quietly and listening for me is another practice. Playing my guitar, writing. These are the spaces where, in the flow of those states, I often get in touch with things that I can't get to by trying to get to them. That's what I mean by becoming a fish, I guess. I hope that's helpful. Gotta dance. Yeah, totally. All right. It's time for a little dark chocolate. Guys, ready for some horoscopes? Before we do horoscopes, I'm going to remind everyone of the Kickstarter real quick, and then we'll dive into some horoscopes. So first of all, thank you to everyone for contributing. We've had 122 people who have contributed to the Kickstarter campaign so far. Thank you so much for your support. Here's the link in the comments section. You can also go to nightlightastrology.com and find the link at the top. Head over to the Kickstarter campaign, pick out one of the awesome rewards we have, or class passes or bundles, all sorts of exclusive content you can pick up. We need the support of 2,043 backers by New Year's Eve. We're at 122 right now. Good start for the first couple of days, but we need to keep going. So if you enjoy this content, if it's stimulating in a good way, if the dialogue and conversation, even the debates, if they're meaningful to you, please consider pitching in and supporting us. It goes a long way to everything that we do, especially keeping all of our programs on sliding scales and affordable tuition. There's 50 every year, 50 to 60% of the students that come through our programs are usually hurting financially. And I'll say we're unique in the field of astrology in the way that we provide that kind of flexibility. The reason that it works is because of the Kickstarter. It really is that simple. The Kickstarter's success funds a significant portion of everything that we do that supports us not having bottom lines as a business. So, and we try to make the Kickstarter something where you still get something. You get free content year round, 7 days a week, but you also can pick a gift. So if you like this channel, please support it. Okay, let's go ahead and get into some horoscopes. We've spent, I think, a good time unpacking the nature of the transit. So what we're going to do next is look at some horoscopes. Now, what I am going to do is I'm going to isolate everything except the planets that we are focusing on. Just to keep this nice and simple looking, I really need that for myself personally. All right. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this rising sign by rising sign in pairs. The reason we're going to take this in pairs is that our horoscope for the day is an opposition. So first, we'll look at Aries on the ascendant, then we'll look at Libra on the ascendant, since we're just flip-flopping the positions of the new moon and Uranus. And we're going to look at this in terms of the mundane things that may come about, in other words, the topics of the houses, but then we're also going to look at them in terms of the underlying Purushartas, which are the deeper philosophical concerns of the human soul that are behind the topics of the house. And I think that adds some depth that's really nice. So I recommend listening for your rising sign, because that'll coincide with the whole sign house version of your birth chart. But you can also listen to this for your sun sign if that's what you prefer, always. Let me do one thing here. All right. Give me just a second. Set myself up. Okay. So we're going to start with Aries and Libra as a dyad, starting Aries, and then I'll switch to Libra. For either Aries or Libra risings, you're getting this across your 2nd and 8th house. Things do change significantly depending on whether that new moon is in the 8th or the 2nd, because the new moon is the source of the new material, the new chapter that's coming in, whereas the position of Uranus will be the place from which revolutionary energy, let's call it, is sparking change. So if you're in Aries, this is in the 8th house. This is a place that's considered a moksha house, which means its deeper concern is with attachments, entanglements, and liberation. Now, not every attachment is negative. For example, if you attach yourself to people who are spiritual, loving, good, kind, these are positive attachments that facilitate in the moksha or liberation of your soul. Whereas if you attach yourself to people who are parasitic, egotistical, maybe because of your own shadows, right? Then those will be relationships that you get entangled in, that you will eventually have to be liberated in through the kind of karmic process that the 8th house involves, which is often a process of, there's like the 8th house is described as a place of debts and penalties. The debts and penalties of the 8th house are like, well, I got something out of this for me, and they got something out of this for them. Was it equal or not? But in almost all cases, when we're talking about difficult 8th house karma, we're talking about relationships where the give and take or the exchange was rooted in unconsciousness and shadow. And we have to be liberated from those kinds of relationships, those kinds of give and takes. And we have to learn how to replace them with those that are of the highest vibration, let's call it. So for Aries right now, it's all about that. It's all about a new chapter, maybe born out of a sudden ending or shift or change that comes unexpectedly. But it's about looking very deeply at what attachments are right and not so right for you. It's looking at what entanglements are proving to be chaotic and painful and filled with suffering versus what kinds of soul contracts are facilitating your growth and liberation spiritually. It's about the natural process of things being relinquished and let go of, all kinds of attachments, which can sometimes include death in the eighth house, but usually metaphorical, not always so literal. And it's about what new chapter of your life is coming as you have to let go of things, and hopefully in the healthiest way possible. When death happens, we often become so deeply enlightened because we realize, impermanence is real. Death puts everything into perspective. Loss puts everything into perspective. Having to let go of things puts everything into perspective. So there's a new chapter opening for Aries right now where the gravitational center has to do with the give and take of these soul contracts, these karmic relationships, what they give, what they take away, what needs to be liberated, freed, what needs to be let go of. So that's where things are at. But it could manifest through very mundane things like insurance, inheritance, a partner's income or resources, or the give and take of money or values or energy in relationships. Intimacy that's given or exchanged in that house can take on a lot of different forms. Now, the revolutionary impulse is coming from Uranus in the second house for Aries, which is from the financial house and Arta house, which means that these eighth house topics are being facilitated by questions surrounding things like money, material goods and resources, sustenance and support materially, questions about security materially, survival, but also enjoyment, assets, acquisitions, resources. So the dialogue between these two houses is going to be a big part of this new moon. Might be asking yourself questions like, how do I disentangle my money from someone else's? Or how do I free myself from debts or obligations to other people that I don't want? How do I have more of my own things and be less dependent upon others? Or vice versa. How do I open myself as a very independent Aries type of person to being taken care of, or to sharing, or to carrying the load with someone else, or to cooperation? It's not as easy for me to do because I take a lot of pride in being independent. Those are the kinds of questions I'd be looking at, though, if I was an Aries rising right now. Now, let's flip it. Let's take a look at the Libra rising. So for the Libra rising, the new moon's in the second, whereas Uranus is in the eighth. So for that dynamic, we're looking at the second house, the new moon seeding point there, creating a new cycle with respect to things like money, resources, assets. Again, an Arta house, which pertains to the natural human impulse to survive, thrive, and enjoy material things. We need material things to survive, like food, shelter, clothing. Is it wrong to pray for a house? No, right? Not at all, right? Is it, on the other hand, how much do I need? That's a good ethical, moral question. How much is enough? How much can, if my business starts doing well, a question for a Scorpio second house right now might be, what do I do with the success I'm having? Do I simply buy nicer things, or do I invest it into the business, or do I save it for retirement, or do I put something in an account for my kids' education? Questions about how you value and utilize resources, maybe in a new or next chapter of life, could be at the center of things right now. Questions about like long-term stability, investments, security, the connection between your emotional security and financial or material security. Questions between, what are the shadows coming up in me around my attachments, my emotional body to things? What things do I actually need? What things are superfluous? And the revolution is coming through Uranus in the eighth, which is asking you about how free are you from, unhealthy entanglements? Or what kinds of collaborations are going to facilitate a deepening of your material assets or resources? What relationships can revolutionize your material values? These are the kind of conversations taking place between the second and eighth house, but the emphasis for Librans is on the second. Really, the new moon there is more of the seeding point. Something's changing around your material assets, resources, how you define happiness, success, pleasure, security relative to material things. Okay, so we've gone through the Aries Libra dynamic. We're going to shift now into the Taurus Scorpio. On that note, a little bit of dark chocolate. Okay. If you're a Taurus rising, the new cycle is planting a seed. It begins in the seventh house, a comma house, which means even more than your relationships, your marriage, your dating life, your interpersonal relationships. The house is really about pleasure and happiness as it exists in human relational dynamics. In other words, it's not just, yes, relationships happen here, but the deeper question of the seventh house is always, isn't there a sphere? We can all identify this in ourselves. There's a part of human life that says, I'm only happy to the extent that I'm in happy relationships. Could be a best friend, could be a lover, could be multiple lovers, like whatever your style or mode of relationship is, if it's marriage, whatever. The point is, we seek depth, meaning intimacy, fusion emotionally with Scorpio in the seventh. If you're a Taurus, those things are very important for you, especially because Taurus risings are going to carry like a pretty self-sufficient, solid, practical, grounded Venusian aura. Like, I feel good. I like to look good. I like good food. I like, it's like I'm a Venusian earthy creature. But then what we often need, us Taurus risings, in relationship is profound emotional depth and intensity and a little bit more Marsy, passionate, erotic connection. The exchange needs to be really profound, because the contrary first house tends to be very sort of stable and earthy and a little bit simpler, and sort of stable in an earthy, practical way. So again, the Scorpio often is something that's deeply needed for Taurus. Well, this cycle is all about going a step deeper. What really provides you with happiness in relationships? What is the true secret to pleasure and connection and intimacy and depth? You're looking at that right now. It's important. Maybe there's been a lot of growth that's happened, but Mercury retrograde coming back, you're going a level deeper. You're reconsidering things. Things from the past are coming back. You have to maybe pass some tests that are going to be markers of how much you've evolved or grown or changed or healed in this area. The new cycle also suggests that you're ready to graduate. Like you're ready to go up a level in terms of how much and how much connection and how much openness you have available in you. I think that's a great way of looking at what I've been feeling for sure. It's like Ashley and I have been together, gosh, like 14, going on 15 years. And I still feel like, well, she has Jupiter in her first house right now in Cancer. I feel like she's been accessing a lot of deeper, new emotional space within herself. Well, that's great for me because it means that there's new spaces in my wife to get to know, which provides me with new intimacy, new levels of excitement to connect with another person. And it's like that in friendships too. Your friend takes a trip. I don't know. They go to India. They go to Egypt. They see some part of the world. They come back. Your conversation at coffee is now a lot deeper. And all of a sudden they're able to see you in ways that maybe they weren't before. Everyone knows what it's like when a relationship is suddenly capable of more. It can go a little bit deeper, and how exciting that is. What's providing that greater depth or that change or shift in relationships right now? That's the questions for Tauruses. But it's coming off from the revolutionary changes that you've been embracing in yourself. How have you changed personally? How have you evolved and grown? And how have you individuated? Over the last 7 years, how have you individuated? And how has this led to a really, this is the last big opposition between planets in these two signs in a moon cycle before Uranus leaves Taurus for good. So the question the question might be, how have you evolved as a person over 7 years? And what is this leading to in terms of a really unique point of change or shifting in your relationships? Now, if we shift this to the other side, we're going to put Scorpio in the first house. And there we go. We put Scorpio in the first house. And now the emphasis for the new cycle is on selfhood. When there's so much emphasis on the first house, the focus is really on me. Who am I becoming? How am I changing? What needs to be incorporated, integrated, included in myself that hasn't been? Or sometimes the growth comes because we realize things that have been a part of me no longer have a role or a purpose that's going to be constructive or needed. So how do I release some part of myself? That letting go or that embracing of different aspects of self is central to something like this. The insights, the realizations can be really profound with the Mercury Cazimi in the first house. Now, the opposition to Uranus might be facilitating some of this personal insight, personal change through the presence of other people in your relationships. That might be kind of like the energetic impetus, but it is fundamentally about, who do you want to be right now? Who are you becoming? What do you need to make more room for, or what do you need to let go of that reflects a deeper, more authentic sense of self? This is the Dharma house, 7th house, comma. Dharma means what is essential. What is essential and what is true or real about reality itself. That's the big Dharma that we study through things like astrology. But Dharma on the level of the soul means what is real or true about me. And so that's at the center right now for Scorpios, maybe facilitated by the revolutionary impulse of Uranus in the relationship house. Okay, let's now shift into we're going to go Gemini, Sag. Whoops, here we go. Get these planets all together here. I think Geminis and Sages may have the hardest opposition because it's across two of the hardest houses. But I want to say right from the start that this may also provide some of the most meaningful opportunities for growth or change of any of the horoscopes. These two houses on the outside, on the mundane level, everyone, we either try to turn it into rainbows and unicorns, or we get totally freaked out. We go to extremes. Something in the middle is almost always more appropriate. So let's try to find that middle path with these two houses and find the opportunities for growth despite the difficulties. If you're a Gemini, this is all located in your 6th house. Now, this is an Arta house, which means it has to do with the material world. It has to do with material energy, with material forms, material resources, and it has to do mostly with the difficulties, the labor, the sacrifice, and the work involved in material things. For example, your health requires constant upkeep. For example, sometimes you have to overcome a virus or a cold. It's a bummer, but that's part of it. It's the upkeep, it's the maintenance, it's the work, it's the sacrifice, it's the labor, and it's the hardships that you have to frequently overcome because the material energy is uneven and it features, it's like it's hairy. You know what I mean? So if you're developing a career, you have to work hard, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of labor, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears before you see results. You're chopping wood and carrying water in this house. However, anything that involves sacrifice, often many forms of service, selfless service, meaningful suffering for a greater cause or for something good or humanitarian will take place here, because this house can be very altruistic when passion, willing sacrifice, and hard work go into something bigger than oneself. So for Geminis right now, the question might be, what is it? What's that thing that's bigger than me that's worth all the time, labor, effort, and energy? Because for sure, you know what isn't? Our egos. Our egos are never satisfied. Our egos make so much better a helper, a friend, an advisor than like the ruler. We want to try to put our soul in the center and let the ego be the thing that orbits around the soul as a devoted, loyal friend and helper. That's the right position for our temporary egos in this lifetime, according to the ancient Vedic philosophy. But that means in the realm of Arta that one of the things that we can do with the ego that keeps it feeling helpful and useful is give it a job. When the ego has a job and something to serve that's bigger than itself, oh, it's so helpful. It's like a dog that has to have, like dogs have to have jobs. A lot of dog breeds, like they like to pull things, they like to do things, and you got to give it a stick or it'll become destructive. You got to take it for a walk or it'll become depressed. Dogs are like that. We're like that. We're not different. This house is associated with small work animals, by the way. So what is the work I can give my ego in the material world that is pointed towards something higher? That will teach my ego that I am here to serve. I'm here to labor and work and serve. It could be your own body and your own health. It could be your development of astrology as a student. It could be nursing or social work or something like literally service oriented in the world. But the question for Geminis right now, I think, is probably about what does the next chapter of life look like? Because I'm getting clearer about what I can serve, what I can be in service to that's of like higher value that will purify me and that will help my ego feel like it has a noble reason for being here, but it's also not the center of everything. And if we need karmic adjustments, like a karmic chiropractic adjustment from the universe to decentralize the ego and remind it something is bigger, we might get that during a cycle like this. That's part of why the sixth house is called mala fortuna, or bad fortune. All bad fortune is meant to do from the spiritual perspective is keep reminding us that if you're chasing egoic satisfaction and material satisfaction in this world, you're going to be chasing your tail in a never-ending circle, and that circle is pain. So like if you want to find bliss, if you want to find ecstasy in the soul, then you have to be a soul-centered being, which means the ego becomes a facilitator and servant of the soul. That reorientation is at the heart of all ancient mystical traditions. I don't know one that it isn't. And that reorientation is a major issue in the 6th and 12th houses. The 12th house is interesting because it's a moksha house that has to do with events that happen to decentralize the ego, but that feel really wildly out of our control, or that feel spiritual, otherworldly, mystical, and often feature encounters with our own unconscious, our own demons, our own shadows, things that undermine us and take us out of control. There's a lot of the moksha here is very karmic, and often painful and very humbling, but also so mystical. And for example, a lot of people, the fear, the terror, the purging, the letting go of an ayahuasca ceremony, very 12th house. And afterward, they'll be like, that sucked. I felt like I had no control whatsoever. I had no sanity whatsoever. I didn't know who I was or where I was. It was totally harrowing. Yeah, but how do you feel now? I feel completely reborn, and I feel like I just saw something very sacred, and now I feel like my life has higher meaning and purpose again. Like that's what the 12th house does. So does the 6th. The 6th tends to do so in terms of the material energy, the 12th in more psycho-spiritual ways, but they're both doing the same thing. So that's what's happening for Geminis. Now let's relocate this and flip it so that I can tell you how it differs if you're a Sag. All right, let me just get this into position here. So if you're a Sagittarius, this is happening in the 12th house. Now, a new moon cycle in the 12th house, again, it's very much like a balsamic moon as a symbol. A balsamic moon is about a very deep and sort of dark, shadowy, mystical layer of undoing. Becoming undone is painful, whether it's through addiction or suffering or loss or grief. The 12th house experience is where you get that reminder that you completely lost perspective of the fact that you're going to die someday. Everyone's going to die someday. You're a spiritual being. You have a story in mind about how you think life is going to go, and it's not going to go that way. You have an idea about how things will end in your life, and it's not going to end that way. It's going to be more difficult. It's going to be more of an encounter with truth and suffering than you imagined. That doesn't take away bliss. It doesn't take away love. It doesn't take away light. But it brings you back to those things because of putting you in touch with the things that you tried to push out of your awareness. That's why the 12th house is called a blind spot. So for Sages, it might be about getting in touch with that right now, that there's a blind spot. There's something you're not wanting to look at. But if you look at it right now, I just say this as counseling so many people through 12th house transits over the year. If you look at it bravely, courageously, with a certain degree of surrender and trust in your heart, oh my God, how liberating, how healing, how transformative this cycle could be for you. Now, it might be perpetuated by things that feel like they're chaotic or unstable or erratic happening in the material world, in the material realm of Arta. Remember, Arta in the 6th, Moksha in the 12th. The moksha is very big and cosmic and can feel very psycho-spiritual. The 6th, very mundane. The 6th is more like the chop wood, carry water house, as we were saying just a minute ago. So you could be having this kind of psycho-spiritual point of transformation facilitated by things that are a little wonky or haywire happening in the material world. It's your car breaking down. It's your kid getting sick. It's the unexpected twist or turn of fortune that feels very practical and earthy, but it's actually part of a much bigger undoing and realigning spiritually and emotionally, psychologically, etc. So easily two of the hardest places for the opposition, but again, also wherever the astrology looks the gnarliest is often where the most profound growth occurs, and that's just part of it. Oh, I mean, when I hit those transits, I don't like them any more than anyone else, but I've also found that they are some of the most special places to have transits occurring. Okay. Let's go back in order here, and we're going to go to Cancer next. So oh, you know what? Time for a little dark chocolate. Time for a little sip of my morning coffee. How you guys doing? We all doing okay? There's at least 3 people casting spells on me right now. You don't believe in magic? I'll cast a spell on your ass. Okay. Let's go to we're gonna start with Cancer, so we get the 5th and the 11th house axis. Now we have a Dharma house and a Kama house opposite one another again. For Cancers, the new chapter that's unfolding in your life with this new moon is centered in the 5th house. That's a creative Dharma house. Now, this is such a beautiful house because it really says there's different layers or levels to who you are as a dharmic being, which means like the truth of who you are in this lifetime, but also as a soul. The 1st house is the part of you that is conscious, social, self-aware. The 5th house is the part of you that can only be truly expressed and felt through acts of creativity and creative or spontaneous, loving interactions of your authentic self with others. So the 7th house is about bliss and pleasure in relationships. The 5th is about getting in contact with your essence as you express yourself creatively in relationships, which is why it's a romance house and a house also connected with sex, procreation, pregnancy, and children, all creative acts that are sexual, romantic, but that are rooted in your creative seed, your creative womb, to use those kind of like sexual images. So cancers are pregnant with creativity right now. It is like, if you're a Cancer, you could be pregnant with a literal child, but at a deeper level, the question of the fifth house is, who am I? And this is a part of me that can only be accessed through things I create. Now, things I create can be as simple as how I creatively express myself while I'm hanging out with people I love. Accessing new levels of your creative authenticity in very everyday exchanges with other living beings sounds very simple, but it's actually really profound. I remember very vividly having some fifth house. I had a fifth house Saturn transit that occurred just prior to the release of my book and just prior to my Saturn return. And during that time, I was just, every ayahuasca ceremony I went through, I was looking at all of the inhibitions I had that were governing the simplest interactions with other people. I'm like, why am I holding myself back? Why don't I just act like myself? Why won't I just say or feel or emote around other people in the ways that I'm actually feeling? Why am I curating everything? Very common Saturn experience in the fifth house, by the way. As Saturn gradually moved through that house, lesson after lesson after lesson was about, in small moments, in everyday moments, at the social work job that I went to every day. How do I show up as being more creative, more spontaneous, more original, which is to say, just living from the present wellspring of my authentic nature? How do I just do that better? That's a fifth house concern. Now, that could translate into a magnum opus, a project, an album, a book, a baby. It might be some new chapter that's starting that has a really significant creative project behind it that will be an expression of this creative authenticity. But it can also be so simple. The shifts can be much more mundane, and that doesn't make them any less special or important. If it's just a recalibration of how you're showing up, especially with Scorpio, I'm going to be a little deeper. Or if you're in a relationship, I'm going to show my kink a little bit more, like whatever. It might be a little bit deeper, a little edgier. There's something, doesn't it make perfect sense that the dharma of a Cancer rising is like sweet, maternal, gentle, romantic, lunar, but their creative dharma has to get in touch with Scorpio, right? Makes total sense. It's like that for all of the trines between house 1 and 5, by the way. They're all sort of ironic like that if you know your signs. But so the other thing that's happening, though, is this creative authenticity is getting in touch with the revolutionary impulse of Uranus in the 11th house. For example, for me to be creatively authentic might mean that I disrupt or disturb people in various social groups or social circles, and it makes me feel really unsettled. Like, I can tell that if I'm being myself and acting more, like me in like scorpionic creative way, that people are like, ooh, that's edgy. I don't like that, and maybe that's feedback for you that you hang around people that are uptight and boring. This is Taurus in the 11th. Maybe your social life is too safe and sweet and stable and normal. Maybe you hang around with people that care about money or possessions or social stability too much. And so you're blocking your ability to be more creatively provocative. Okay, so I can't give a shit what Suzanne in the car line at school thinks about me and the way I raise my kids, like whatever it is. So that's the kind of edginess you might be confronting right now. How do I be creatively authentic, and what feathers does it ruffle, or how does it rearrange or shift my social orientation? The 11th house has to do with karma in a social context. Where do I find pleasure in human relationships? But in this case, it's cultural, it's social, it's collective happiness. How do I define happiness professionally, socially, culturally, etc.? Well, your creative essence is having some revolutionary conversations with Uranus in that house, which might be changing your social dynamic to accommodate for your creative dynamic, if that makes sense. Suzanne wants to be creative too. Well, let's stick up for Susanna. She needs you. She needs you to be your fabulous, edgy, provocative self, because what you don't know is that when she gets home from the car line, she's going to let her hair down. She's going to unleash her own dark side. So, okay. Well, let's flip this now. Let's flip the script. So we're going to put Capricorn rising. All of you mean goats out there, your horoscope's going to be extra mean. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so for uh so you've got the seeding point here in your 11th house. What that means is that social dynamics are changing. Now, what's interesting for Capricorns is that that social dynamic is already very well aware of and often in touch for Capricorns with darker subcurrents socially. For example, it's much more common for a Capricorn rising than a Cancer rising to find camaraderie among people who speak the language of power. That's a very Scorpionic thing. It's a very Mars thing. Doesn't that make sense? You can see how there's a kind of natural logic to the whole sign house placement. This, by the way, just a side note, you guys hear me railing on about how you can't just be like, well, I like whole sign, I like Placidus better than whole sign, because once you study the entire Hellenistic paradigm, the whole thing is whole sign. So when you're talking about how to understand house 1 and house 11 together, you're always talking about the juxtaposition between two whole signs, which is why, unless you learn the entire logic and language of the whole sign paradigm, it doesn't make sense to compare things, because you're not playing with a full understanding of how whole signs are operating within Hellenistic astrology. So like exactly what I'm saying right now, like, doesn't it make more sense that a Cancerian social dynamics would be Taurian and a Capricorn social dynamics would be Scorpionic? Think, for example, about how a Cancer rising appearing to the world very Cancerian is going to seek out naturally Taurian social dynamics. What's the commonality? The moon. The moon is exalted in Taurus and its rulership in Cancer. They're sextile to one another, and that's deliberate in the scheme. Look now at Capricorn and Scorpio. Capricorn's the exaltation of Mars. Scorpio's the domicile of Mars. Capricorn's much more interested in power, upward social movement, mobility, success, materially speaking. And of course, their social dynamics are much more in touch with Mars. Do you see how that works? That's whole sign paradigm. So once you learn the whole sign paradigm, you're starting to think about the connections between different areas of life through whole sign connections. That's why you can't just compare what your chart looks like in one or the other, because you don't even know how to read the whole thing yet. The whole thing's completely interconnected on the level of the archetypes. Anyway, so more on that, but that's just my little soapbox to tell you, you can't just look at your chart in Placidus without actually studying Hellenistic astrology and know what you're looking at as the difference. Okay, so for Capricorns anyway, the point is that everything starts for you in the 11th house right now. You know, are your relationships socially and how you define social happiness too rooted in things like success and power, too rooted in things like, advantageous social dynamics? That can be a real issue for Scorpio in the 11th. On the other hand, if there is oops, you know what? Let me just do something really quick here. Sorry, guys. Okay, let me put the screen back up. Okay, so if there needs to be a shift or a change in terms of what kind of people, what kind of groups, what kind of social or collective reality is providing you with the best, deepest forms of satisfaction, pleasure, and happiness, then those changes will occur. The other thing is that what's stimulating that is revolution from the house of that creative authenticity. So let's say, for example, you need certain people to help you and you need certain advantages to help you, and you're willing to make certain compromises, but it's all on the down low in service of some creative project you have that you're not quite willing to be forthright or open or honest about socially. That's going to be problematic right now, because you're going to seek different kinds of social advantage that you think will grant you happiness to creative aspects of yourself that you're not being bold enough to share or be honest or open about publicly. That's a problem for Capricorns potentially right now. On the other hand, it could be that creative revolution in spirit is bringing you to a point where you go, no matter how advantageous certain relationships or certain social dimensions of life might be, I can't keep doing them if they're not allowing for or accommodating for my creative nature. And so positive changes, looking at truth and deep, hard things about your social situation in life could lead to very positive healing and growth and change in that area. All right. So I think I've done that one justice. All right, let's go. We're going to go to Leo next. All right, so if you're a Leo, the new moon is taking place in your fourth house, place of home, family, roots. The revolutionary, the new cycle, excuse me, is happening with respect to that space. Now, sometimes that's going to mean really mundane things like where you live or things involving the physical environment of your home. But it can also be as deep as very profound levels of processing, healing with respect to family or ancestral karma, your upbringing. Diving deep into that kind of material right now could yield a lot of healing and change. On the other hand, if you have your own family, if you have your own home, this could be a time where just the way you work as a family is ready to shift somehow. Healthier habits, deeper insights, time to take my daughter to therapy, time for me to go to therapy, time for us to do marriage counseling. Not necessarily, because it doesn't always, and I always like to say, like, when I mention therapy, it's still, in this day and age, people think that that means that there's a problem. Well, life is filled with problems. Therapy is a very proactive, good thing to do because it's a way of having dialogue alongside of the everyday problems. I feel like we have such a kind of like medical model where we think going to therapy means fixing something that's wrong. When to me, therapy, the benefit of therapy, whether it's astrological therapy or traditional therapy, Jungian therapy, whatever, is having guidance along the way of life, which is filled with difficulties all the time. But could it be right now that your family could benefit from help? Could it be that you could use some help as a parent? Another eye, another ear, another voice? Could it be that there's a new form of organization in the way you do your weekdays with your family or your evenings? Or could it be that you need to restructure the home space a little bit more? You know what? I'm going to clean out this room that's filled with junk and make it into a yoga room so that I have a space to rejuvenate every day. Something around the roots is ready to change, to become more supportive, nourishing, viable. You're ready for healing in this area. You're ready for a new chapter that's about coming to terms with things from the past. Now, the revolutionary impulse is coming from Uranus in the 10th house. This is moksha in the 4th and arta in the 10th. So the moksha in the 4th has to do with liberation and greater freedom spiritually, emotionally, psychologically. This is called the resting place. We're going to live a whole life that's not just about, burning off karma for the next life. And it's not just about burning off karma for the sake of some future enlightenment. Every single day, in order to step into moksha, ultimately, we need to be able to step into it temporally, which means how are you ever going to illuminate as a soul if you can't illuminate at least once or twice in a 24-hour day? So the 4th house speaks to the home or the resting place as a place of psychic refuge. It's like the well you draw water from in the village. If you don't have a place like this in your daily life, you're spinning your wheels existentially. We need spaces where we can go, okay, wow, I just experienced all, like after this live stream, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to turn this off and I'll look right into your eyes. I'm going to sit the fuck down and I'm going to shut up on that couch right there. After doing all this and saying all this monkey banana nonsense to all of you wonderful people out there, I'm going to sit my ass down on that couch and I'm going to shut up and I'm going to listen for a while. Because it feels so good to just like, okay, that was a lot of energy. Now I'm just going to sit. If we don't have spaces, it could be for 10 minutes, could be for 5 minutes. You could take a walk with your dog. You could journal. You could dance. You could dance crazy to Madonna music. The point is, if you don't take care of your living being without any material motivation or goal or constant stimulation, taking in of new information, processing, if you don't have a space to just let things flow through you and process them and let them integrate, let things heal, what are we doing? What are we doing? And how do we think that any amount of podcasts like this or anything else are going to do anything positive if we don't know how to take care of ourselves, All right, that message brought to you by my Cancer son's concern for your well-being. Now, back to our regularly scheduled program. So my point is, for Leos, take care of yourself. And maybe that revolution at the roots is also being perpetuated by some changes around career, your work in the world. When there's a lot of stress at work, when there's a lot of stress in our day jobs or the way we have to show up in the world, and we realize that I'm starving on the inside, well, then both places they're speaking to each other. So watch for the relationship between inner well-being, family, home life, and the external public sphere of your work. All right, now if we flip this, everything changes for Aquarians. So for Aquarians, the new moon, the new cycle forming in your 10th house, that's your Arta house, the place of work in the world, reputation, power, influence, notoriety. To a certain degree, it's wealth and status. The material acquisitions and gain more tangibly are typically connected to the second house. But the 10th house is often about your reputation, your visibility, your clout, your power, your influence, your prestige, which can be connected to your wealth or your material things, but is usually more about things like my mastery. In the 10th house, if you're an astrologer, it's like people know me in a certain circle as a reputable, good at astrology. Or if you're, I don't know, if you're an acupuncturist or you're a massage therapist or something, it's like, yeah, I have a client database and they all come back to me regularly because they think I'm good at what I do. That's the kind of success. It's very simple, but it's usually like that. So we're thinking about those things, our level of mastery or our ability level, the development of that ability level, our vocation, prestige. Also, in a broader sense, this is simply what we do, the actions that we take in the public eye that other people see in public. In that way, infamy can also belong here. But for Aquarians right now, there's a new cycle starting up in that sphere of life, career, public position. I wonder what conversations about power are taking place right now for Aquarians. What is your role? Do you feel like it's enough? Do you feel respected or appreciated? In what way are your abilities being seen and recognized or honored or overlooked? What changes are happening in the workplace environment? And then the revolutionary impulse is coming from Uranus in the 4th, the place of home, family, roots. What is on the inside? What is in the private sphere of life? And how is it connected to what's happening in the public sphere? That's the conversation for Aquarians in the opposite direction that we were just talking about for Leos. Okay, finally, we have Virgo Pisces. So we're going to look at the Virgo new moon, the Virgo rising has the new moon forming in the 3rd house, opposite Uranus in the 9th. This is a Kama house opposite a Dharma house again. And to me, this is fascinating because the Kama of the 3rd house here, and I've said this multiple times if you've watched my live streams in the past couple of weeks, this house is maybe, I think, one of the most misunderstood houses in the entire history of modern astrology. When you look at it from the Vedic perspective, in my opinion, it makes the most sense. It gives the most context to all of the Hellenistic significations. So what does that mean? There is a level at which we experience, Kama is all about social happiness and bliss. We're social creatures. And so psychological and emotional fulfillment and happiness is found in and through other people in the 11th, collectively, interpersonally in the 7th, but in the 3rd, it's found in your own mind. It's found in your own psychology, and it's found in terms of the things that you are able through effort to draw forth from your own nature. So for example, if you're like, gosh, I'd love to be a good writer, and you work and work and work and practice and practice and practice, and you develop the ability to be a good writer, you will take pleasure in the skill and ability that you've developed, that you've cultivated in yourself. You'll develop psychological well-being and happiness from having cultivated that. So there's a lot of houses that have to do with skill development in ancient astrology. For example, the 6th, the 9th, the 2nd, all associated with learning, skill development. But in the 3rd, the skill development contributes to a feeling of liking yourself. It has to do with feeling psychologically satisfied. So for example, many people with the sun, Mercury in the 3rd house will need to develop speaking, teaching, writing, forms of self-expression, communication, or intelligence. They'll need to cultivate it, develop it, and shine it on the world or speak it or communicate it to feel happy with themselves. I have the sun and Mercury in the 3rd house. So that makes so much sense for someone who podcasts for a living. Totally. So the new moon in the 3rd for Virgos right now has to do with some new part of yourself that you are working to cultivate through practice and effort, psychologically and emotionally. If you develop this, you're going to feel better about yourself. Could be something you're learning, a skill you're building or developing, a way of expressing yourself or communicating, the goal of which is to like yourself more, to feel happier with your skills and with your own nature. On the other hand, this house also has to do with competitors. There's a natural way in which we feel happy socially relative to the feeling of being better than other people. How's that for honest? And it doesn't have to be malicious. It's just like there's a natural competitive way that we say, I feel happy to the extent that I'm not just a good writer, but that I'm better than most writers. You might say, oh, that's petty, that's shallow. Yeah, I mean, how else do you distinguish yourself as good at something? If not for saying, well, I'm good at it because I'm better than other people. So this house has to do with peers and competitors, including siblings, for that reason, because we're always trying to cultivate a level of happiness in ourselves that's socially comparative. That doesn't have to mean that you dislike people, but it means that you feel like you stand out somehow in contrast to other people. There's some things I'm good at that I'm a little bit better at than most people. That might mean that there's a lot of people who are still a lot better than you, or, but you develop a sense of self-esteem relative to what you're able to draw forth from yourself that you take pleasure in, that relatively speaking makes you rare or unique among others. All of that's the 3rd house. So there's something really new here that Virgos are trying to cultivate or develop, or maybe reflecting on what makes them good or special. A lot of learning there, perhaps skill development. Now that's also being facilitated by Uranus in the 9th, which is the house of Dharma. The 9th house has to do with studying universal truth. It has nothing to do with your own mental, psychological makeup and happiness derived from it. It has to do with it's like metaphysics in the 9th house. What is true? What is real about reality itself? Religion, physics, science, astrology, whatever the discipline or study is, it's about understanding the larger truth or essence of reality. The 3rd house is about understanding the truth or essence of your own psychology, your own abilities and how you derive pleasure or happiness from them. The 3rd and the 5th are connected by sextile. Notice how similar they are. There's a lot here, again, whole sign, that shows us why the creative essence of a Virgo would be Capricorn, but would also be connected to the psychological essence of Scorpio. All of the whole sign connections like this are meaningful, especially once you start studying the dignities. Anyway, so a revolution here, mentally, spiritually, intellectually, leading to new forms of learning or psychological development for Virgos. I think about this. Let me give you an example. My daughter's a Virgo rising, so you guys have heard her Virgo horoscopes before. But as this new moon is forming, we have our kids talk to a therapist, which is not like because of a problem. It's just something we think is very proactively positive. So it's a little bit, I don't even know, it's like a little bit like a kid getting to talk to a life coach. Like, how are you feeling? How's life? How's your social life? And getting to talk with someone that isn't mom and dad. It's been really good for our kids. And I highly recommend parents consider something like that. Anyway, so she came out of her little therapy session and she was talking with us about how watching anything overly stimulated, like a movie, too close to bedtime, is like, she notices that she has a harder time falling asleep. And we were both so proud of her for having that recognition as a 10-year-old. It's like, that's so cool. Um, and so she was having some breakthroughs. Well, you know what she said? She said, I realized it during morning yoga. So both my daughters get up with my wife and do yoga with her in the morning before school. And she said, I actually thought about it during yoga this morning. So we were able to help her, maybe one of the first times in her life, connect a therapeutic healing insight about her own mind, her own wiring, her processing of movies with the art and practice of yoga. And we were saying, this is why we do yoga. That insight that you had, you connected it to yoga. That's why we do yoga. So you see how that's a third, ninth house dynamic? She's starting to understand what brings her happiness, psychological, how her own mind works. It's connected to something like yoga in the ninth house. That's a 10-year-old. And I swear to God, like, your kids are not too young to have them sit quietly, to do yoga, to, have meaningful therapeutic conversations if you can find the right, person for them to be with. These are profound things that I think, we tend to think you don't go to these things until you're an adult and you're unwiring childhood problems and all this stuff. But, we in many ways, we're missing something from the ancient world that was very common, which are elders and sages and gurus and priestesses, much more common in the ancient world. Not that the ancient world was perfect either, but all right, well, let's flip to Pisces to close. Oh, where am I? Oops. Yeah, here we are, Pisces. Okay, so if you are a Pisces, this new moon is taking place in your ninth house. That's the place of Dharma, higher truth. What I love about this is it's just the opposite of what we were talking about. For Pisces right now, you're entering a time of like a meaningful paradigmatic shift. This is one of those times where you're ready to understand more about reality. Mystical experiences often deliver us further insight. Like, I would say one of the simplest, most profound spiritual insights I've ever had in my life that came from my first couple of ayahuasca ceremonies, though I had an intellectual sense of it before, but it really made it real and true for me, on a level of like, well, it's not even like a belief anymore. It's just more of a gnosis or a knowing, was that I'm a spirit soul. Sounds really simple. Like, I grew up in the Christian faith. Of course I'm a spirit soul. But in those ceremonies, I was like, oh shit, I really am one, So yeah, whatever the spiritual insight that's coming through for Pisces right now, it can be paradigm changing. And it doesn't have to be profound. It can be super simple, but paradigm changing nonetheless. How are shifts in religion, faith, ethics, philosophy, learning, instructors, teaching, places of higher learning, spiritual pilgrimages, how are there openings in these kinds of spaces in your life right now, providing you with a better understanding of what's true and real? And how is that immediately impacting your psychology and teaching you what it means to be you, what it means to take joy in your own psychological, intellectual nature? That's what's happening for Pisceans as I see it between those two houses. All right, we did it. So I'm going to reward myself with just a little nib, a little nib of cacao. All right. What questions you guys have? Well, actually, before I let you walk all over me, well, I'm just kidding. Before I take questions, let me point you one last time to the Kickstarter. And then I have such a weird sense of humor. I'm sorry, you guys. All right. Our goal is 2043 backers by New Year's Eve. Let's go over. I think we've had 5 or 6 backers that have come through since this started, which is great. We really need a pace of like 20 or 30 a day. So that means if you're listening to this, there's 390 of you that are listening to this. There was at one point over 500 people listening to this. We need literally a very, very small sliver of that audience, like 20 of you, to say, hey, this is the day I'm going to pitch in $20, $10, $5, just to say, this means something to me. I support the real humans, the real people behind the scenes, whose livelihood and daily work is creating all of this stuff. We really appreciate it. We really deeply do. And it's my promise to you to always do my very best to keep a spiritual focus, to keep a good sense of humor, to try to stay humble, and to keep promoting positive things in the field of astrology to help other astrologers succeed and to help people who may not have much have easy access to spiritual depth and learning. Those are our values. Those are, we can't have all of the missions in the world, but we have a few that really mean something, and it means a lot to us when you support them. So head over to the Kickstarter. The link is in the comments section. I'm going to post it again. Click on the link, head over there, pick up a class pass, pick up one of the exclusive lectures, pick up something cool. We got lots of stuff over there. You can also go to nightlightastrology.com, and the link to the Kickstarter is at the top of the page. Okay. On that note, thank you again to everyone who's donated today. It's fun to do live streams. There'll be one next week on Tuesday. Next Tuesday. What the heck are we talking about? Oh yeah, next Tuesday we're going to talk about Venus and Jupiter getting together, the two benefics in a trine. It's very auspicious. It's one of the more auspicious transits that us astrologers cover in a year. Anytime the benefics trine one another, it's sort of like we're all going to Toys R Us, And is it that good? Is it? And like, what are some of the potential shadows around Venus, Jupiter? We're going to talk about all that in the live stream next Tuesday morning. So check that one out. I think it's going to be at 10 a.m. as well. It might be 9:30. Either way, it'll be posted. You'll see the post on YouTube. If you follow me on Instagram, stuff like that. So on that note, let's take just a few questions. I have a little bit of time for Q&A before I need to go eat lunch. I'm looking forward to following along with your new book, cool Kickstarter reward. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I just finished my first, well, it's not my first book, it's my second book technically, but I just finished a new book. I'm editing that. That will come out in print form and ebook form, hopefully by the spring. And then this new book, you'll be getting the chapter by chapter release through the Kickstarter. And this new book is, it's like a collection of sermons from the stars that are about the nature of astrology, what this is that we're doing, and also what it isn't, a lot of common misconceptions and sort of notes from, a lot of client experience, really getting into what is astrology as a spiritual art, as a spiritual practice. So I think people are really going to like the essays in this book. They're going to be really fun and upbeat and hopefully like really insightful and try to help people put words to things that in your heart, but sometimes need words around to fully like realize or integrate. That's the goal behind this new book. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them into the chat, and I'll just see if I can take a few before we get going. Question 1, what software do you use? I use SolarFire right now. I am very excited about getting on board with Nichepso as they are getting closer to working out bugs and sort of getting Nichepso ready to launch. I'm friends with Patrick and Nick and some of the guys working on Nichepso, so I think probably I'll be using that. Theros is a good one. Brandon's an alumni from my program. He's come on the channel. That's a great browser-based program you can use that's really nice. What is your program able to give a Hellenistic knowledge to an astropsychology-based astrologer as a way to add some predictive astrology to my work? Well, that is exactly what we do. Yeah, because my background is in archetypal psychology and astrology as a modern astrologer, but then my career took a real deep dive into ancient forms of astrology, Hellenistic, medieval, Indian astrology. And so the programs that I teach are meant to build meaningful bridges between ancient predictive forms and modern psychological forms. That's all of our curriculum. First 2 programs, year 1 and year 2, are really about Hellenistic natal astrology and forecasting techniques, all of which are very much more predictive than modern psychological astrology. But then year 3 is archetypal psychology and counseling. And so it's about integrating the Hellenistic back into the psychological. I think astrology, I think that's like where it's at personally. So yeah, you'll find all of that is really at the heart of what we do. I think you'd love it. Any tips for noticing what in our life aligns with the transits without thinking we have to force it? Or is there a degree of using it to guide our actions as well? So symbols in astrology have many different functions because they're multivalent. So a symbol in astrology, whether it's a transit or something in your natal chart, or both a part of your natal chart and a transit to it, are symbols that can be worked with in different ways. So for example, a symbol tracked out through time in its cyclical movements in the heavens can give you a kind of symbolic, imagistic sense of how something is going to unfold, or what themes and topics are going to unfold around a certain timeline. But the use of the symbol in that way, which we call prediction or forecasting, is just the use of symbols mapped out in a linear time space that allow us to anticipate events in a symbolic manner. In other words, astrologers really can give you themes, topics, and timelines. We can tell you what themes, what topics on what timelines are going to unfold, and that's one use of a symbol. Because the symbols we track are moving through time in predictable cycles, we can use them in this way. However, you can also use symbols as a means of validation. For example, I just went through something. I look at the stars, and in the stars, I'm always, because the stars are a symbolic mirror, I can always find a set of symbols that perfectly mirror my experience. And so in that way, symbols are validating. And sometimes the action of in interaction astrologically is nothing more than symbolic mirroring and validation. For most of us, that validation is really all we need, in the same way that if you're talking with a friend, most of the time you don't need advice, you don't need instruction, you need a listening ear. The cosmos listens to us through its mirroring. And that's literally how it's talked about. As a contemplative art form, your experience in and of itself is sacred as soon as you feel like it's held and given cosmic context. And so another use of symbols, in addition to prediction or tracking themes, topics, and timelines, is to simply use them to reflect and validate. Another level at which you can use symbols is to instruct or guide. But that takes a lot more time and depth and relationship to cultivate, because we have to learn how to distinguish the voice of the oracle from, our own ego. And not that there's anything wrong with the ego, but like, it takes a while to hear the voice of guidance through symbols. It takes time and effort and trial and error and practice and diligence and humility and, learning. And and that's the same with any oracle, the tarot, the I Ching. You have to go through many experiences where you read the cards in the way you think that they're speaking, and you run with it only to realize, oh no, actually the cards were speaking in a different way and I projected something onto them. That process is very purifying. It's very healthy. It's very normal, but that makes finding guidance in symbols a lot trickier. And it's also why the kind of overly simplified forms of guidance that are constantly given by astrologers can be so problematic, because when you hear guidance over and over again, this is what the stars are telling you to do, this is what, and it's just such confidence in what the stars are guiding you to do. Well, the stars guide us very differently and uniquely and personally. And so anytime you hear an astrologer saying this, broadly speaking, is what the stars are guiding all of us to do right now, you can almost guarantee that that person is projecting something onto the oracle. And so, the guidance in symbols is probably the hardest thing to find, because it takes the most personal refinement and cultivation over a long period of time. It's not generic. It's not cliched. It's always very specific, very nuanced. You have to earn the insights of hearing the oracle's guidance by humility, curiosity, diligence, the willingness to learn, the willingness to be wrong, the willingness to look at your own projections. I'm still doing this all the time. Anyone who knows what I'm talking about knows you're never not continuing to learn down this path, because the oracle is just it's a higher intelligence, it's our teacher. So but that, to me, that sense of it guiding our actions is absolutely one of the uses of symbols, but it is the most personal. It is the goal of all astrology, in my humble opinion. In fact, the very word Jyotish, the meaning of the word that describes what astrology is in the Vedic cosmology, is that it helps us to grasp light. But the same many of the same Sanskrit words have dual meanings. So, for example, a planet can grab or it can mean to grasp. The planets guide and instruct, but they do so over a long period of time as we sort through our own ego in its sense that it knows what's best and it knows what's right. But if we keep going, diligently wanting to learn, diligently saying, okay, that was my projection, but I'm going to keep trying. I want to keep learning. Teach me now, guide me now, align me now. And we keep going, we will learn how to hear it little by little, shred, at a time, and we grow. That's the ultimate use of astrology, is to find that kind of guidance and alignment, which is honestly makes prediction fall to the background, and it makes some constant attempt to locate yourself in the birth chart fall to the background, because the present moment is where the guidance is needed, not in an abstract, objectified sense of selfhood that's more of a distraction than anything else. So this is how the path is supposed to alchemize us over a very long period of time, many years of dedicating ourselves to this as a spiritual practice. So there's many uses of symbols. They all have a purpose. They all have a time. None of them is right or wrong, comparatively. But that looking for that guidance is, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is this was described as a heavenly language from a heavenly intelligence. We're trying to connect with that so that we can have a living, breathing, up to the moment kind of dialogue with that intelligence. That's the goal. All right. Let's see. Okay. Can you talk about the masterclass bundle about fixed stars in the Kickstarter? Yeah, so the use of fixed stars in astrology is really old. You're going to get an intro to like a simple introduction to the use of fixed stars, and kind of like a bundle of good fixed stars to start working with in your practice, as well as descriptions of their meanings, their symbolism, simplest approaches to using them, chart examples. That's the masterclass bundle on the fixed stars. You're a galactic astrologer and wondering what your focus is here. Well, I'm also a galactic astrologer. I'm just kidding. I have no idea what a galactic astrologer is, but I practice Hellenistic astrology, and to me, all forms of astrology are sacred and interesting. And the thing that's great about Hellenistic, even if you remain a galactic astrologer for the rest of your life, is that you're going to learn about the roots of the entire history of horoscopic astrology, its techniques, its theory, its metaphysics. Having that understanding, even if someone's a modern evolutionary astrologer or some other form, galactic or shamanic, or there's all these different schools, learning about the history, like Hellenistic is the first earliest school of astrology. So learning about that, not for the sake of being a traditionalist, but for the sake of having a well-rounded understanding of the craft and its history and so forth, is just so valuable. So, I would encourage anyone to learn about it, and not necessarily think about it as one school being right, but just deepening our understanding in general. Okay, anyway, I'm coming from an EA background and just started with your year 1 program. Do you have any advice on doing readings for people without mixing the two forms and confusing the reading? Yeah, don't do it. Honestly, just don't do readings for a while, or just stick to doing evolutionary readings and kind of compartmentalize. Like, okay, I'm taking Hellenistic, I'm learning Hellenistic. While I'm doing that, if I'm doing readings, I'm just going to stick to my evolutionary and just kind of compartmentalize the two things. There's not one that's right or wrong, but it is important that you not blend the two when you're learning how to practice initially, so that you have really just clear boundaries and clear delineation of craft and technique and strategies. So I would say either don't do readings for a while, or if you are going to do readings, just keep doing your evolutionary, learn the Hellenistic in the background, and then when you feel ready, maybe offer some Hellenistic readings. And then, you can have both in your bag. I did evolutionary readings for 3-4 years at the beginning of my practice. I could still whip into an evolutionary reading if I need to, no problem. So you can compartmentalize. How can someone gift the reward they get to someone else? When we deliver the Kickstarter in the new year, we'll deliver all the gifts. And if you want to give something that you get to someone else, you can just let us know. We'll get their email address. We'll send it over to them. We can do that. There'll be easy spaces for you to do that when we deliver gifts the first week or two of the new year. What's one significant transit that you have highlighted for 2026? That's easy for me. It's the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries. I think it's probably the biggest mundane transit of the year. There are others, but Uranus and Pluto trining one another, I think, is a big deal too. But maybe the trine between Uranus and Pluto, or the conjunction between Saturn and Neptune. Yeah. Does Jupiter and Mars have special relationships similar to Mercury and Saturn? No, the Mercury-Saturn connection's pretty unique. Mars and Jupiter, actually, because Jupiter's in its fall in the sign of Mars's exaltation, and Mars in its fall in the sign of Jupiter's exaltation. So there's a little bit of an antagonistic relationship between them. But they often bring things like victory and success and strength in things like learning or business when they're placed together. They have a kind of like military captain vibe when they come together that can be constructive with respect to like being in leadership or developing things that require a breadth of knowledge and a kind of competitive spirit, like studying the law, for example. Like a good attorney could have like a Jupiter Saturn or a Jupiter Mars dynamic. So it's not like they're like bad together, but there is some antagonism rooted in the dignity scheme that has to be understood. That's a great question. Astrotheros is so legit. I absolutely love it, especially the little dial lets you easily go through transits. Yeah. So Brandon is an alumni. He is a personal friend and colleague. I just love him. Couldn't recommend him highly enough. Love the soft glow of the lights behind you. Such a serene and peaceful setting. Thank you. Actually, my Himalayan rock salt lamps, I think that's what they're called, the light had burnt out and I didn't even realize it. And so I replaced them this morning. They have been out for I think like a year. Because I was like, I don't even remember the last time they were on. So I replaced the bulbs this morning. Felt like very Mercury Uranus to change light bulbs. Creative Exorcist Heel says hello. Well, hello. I have never heard of galactic astrology, doing it 30 years. Interesting. There's always new forms, or there's forms that maybe are called, that have multiple names, Interesting. Could you do an I Ching reading? Not right now. No, I feel like I'm kind of done for the day, but we will, maybe we could do that next week. Next live stream that'd be kind of fun. Adam, would you advise one to join the membership versus the year 2? Not sure I can afford both. I really want to join the guild membership. Year 2 is not a question. It sort of depends on what your goals are. The guild membership is really for students already in the Nightlight world of classes. The guild is meant, like, basically twice a month. The guild membership is going to be, okay, tonight we're meeting for 2 hours. The first hour is a live birth chart reading, like a client practice, like straight from my client practice. Like, this is what a reading looks like. The second half of class is craft discussion based on the reading. The next night might be a talk on a simple way to start using bound rulers in your practice, more intermediate advanced concept. The next night might be live horary readings, where we literally take live horary clients in our classroom and work the charts as a classroom. So if you have my horary class, we work a lot of live horaries together. So this would be like live horary practice. The next night might be the triplicity ruler of the sect light timing technique. The next night might be another live natal client. So it's meant to be a more advanced, intermediate, very hands-on, practice-oriented space, because year 1 and year 2 and year 3, there's a lot of curriculum and theory that we have to get through. So the guild is really meant to be a space for ongoing practical development of skills. So it just depends on what you want. Year 2, you're going to get all of your timing techniques and forecasting techniques. Your natal practice in Hellenistic is not complete without those. So you definitely need to take year 2 with year 1 to get the most out of our curriculum. But you could stagger those. You could go into guild membership in 26 and then the following year take year 2. It's not like they would have to be done in strict sequence. But if you had a choice only between one of the two, I would suggest year 2 next. And then once you have year 2 under your belt, the other benefit is that a lot of the things we talk about that are more intermediate or advanced in the guild, the kind of more hands-on stuff that's more advanced, you're going to know about. So yeah, but it's not strict. Like people who already have a background in Hellenistic, you could hop around. A lot of our programs are pretty flexible in that way. So how significant would it be with this new moon lands on your natal 29 moon Scorpio conjunct Neptune? Well, yeah, that's very significant. Anytime a new moon like this lands on a natal planet within a degree, especially, that's the way to think about it is that promise of karma or fate or destiny in the natal chart it's like the moment at which that part of the garden blossoms. So that part of the chart, its karmic promise is going to fruit when things activate it by transit. So a big moment for you, for sure. Look at the significations of that moon Neptune in the 8th house and think about what that's meant so far in your life, the themes and topics that have been connected to it as you've understood it, and then think, well, this is a time where those things are really going to come to the forefront. That's what I can say here without seeing your chart more. I listen for all 12 signs with people in mind, and 8 of those signs I know intimately within my orbit. You were channeling, Adam. Thank you. I appreciate you so much. Well, thank you. That's great to hear because I have been I had to chocolate my way through the horoscopes so that I didn't die a quiet death on the inside. No, I'm kidding. These actually felt pretty good today. Pretty easy. I didn't really feel stressed. It's hit or miss. Some horoscopes I feel like I'm struggling my way through, and others I feel pretty lit up inside. This was definitely an easier day for me. So is there a particular thing in your chart that gives you so much staying power? I don't know what staying power means. Could you tell me what that means, Debbie, so I understand? That it sounds like a compliment, so thank you. Or if it doesn't mean that I won't shut up, because it might mean that too. Mary says year 2 is amazing. Highly recommend. That's great. Thank you. Yeah, you bet. Happy to help. Melissa, karmic promise. Got to learn about that. Come study with us. We talk about it at length in our programs. That's a huge part of our programs. What are good books on fertility astrology? Kelly Surtees has some really nice work on fertility astrology that I'd recommend. Check her out. I think she probably has something in her website or library. Focus and dedication. Oh, what in my chart? Oh, God. Honestly, I think it's that I have the moon in Capricorn in the 9th house, and its ruler is an exalted Saturn with Jupiter and Pluto in the 6th house. So that daily chopping of wood and carrying of water for the sake of higher dharma, of higher truth, is just like baked into me. I've been like that since I was a little kid. When I was a little kid, for example, we had something at our school. It was like a readathon, and you got people to sponsor you for how many books you read. And I would read like 10 times as many books as anyone. And I raised the most money like 3 years in a row and was like a state champion in the readathon because I would make myself read like a gazillion books. And I would just sit and do it and do it and do it and raise money for multiple sclerosis. And it was also like, if I win, I get a Sega Genesis or tickets to the Vikings game or like something. There was always like prizes too that were kind of motivating. Very Capricorn in that way, right? I've just always been like that. I don't know, just like part of me. I don't just work out. I haven't missed a day in 5 years or whatever. I don't just meditate. I do 2 to 3 hours of meditation every day. I don't just make content. I do it 300 plus days a year. But to me, there's something about, like, if I had to describe myself, I'm sort of like a psychological marathon runner. I love endurance. I love things that are like big, long endurances, sitting through those ayahuasca ceremonies, doing like 100 of them, really going as far as I can go. If you ask me, like, what would make you happy someday when you die? I don't particularly think of myself as the most virtuous person. Like, I have a kind of dirty sense of humor, and I have like asshole tendencies that I'm always like trying to get better at, like I don't consider myself, these patterns and habits don't to me represent being a good person, but they represent trying to be. And I want to die. And people are like, well, no doubt he tried, he tried. He really gave it a go, trying to do good things that he cared about, that were creatively and spiritually fulfilling. And if that leaves a positive mark in the world, even if I'm not the world's best person, that'll mean a lot to me. Okay. Sega Genesis. That's exactly right. Sonic the Hedgehog, man. I was stoked. Where can I find your book on ayahuasca and astrology? Well, glad you asked. I got the rights reverted to me. It was published by Penguin in 2010. The rights were recently reverted to me. So we'll be republishing my book, Fishers of Men, in the spring, and publishing my new book called The Oracle Speaks in the spring as well. So you'll have my old book and my new book, old book reprinted, and brand new book coming out in paperback and ebook form in the spring. I'm super excited to share it with people. I can't wait. It's super exciting. Golden Axe. Yeah, you're speaking to my heart now. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to end it here. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of you for being here. One last time, please remember to support the Kickstarter campaign. I'm going live weekly, trying to give you the best I can, and hoping in return that you will consider supporting the Kickstarter. Our goal is 2,043 backers by New Year's Eve. We have 128 just a couple days in. That's a great start. We really need a strong start. So if you haven't yet, head over to the Kickstarter. I'm going to drop the link in the live stream comments. If you are listening to this as a replay, it will be in the comment section and the description of the video. You can also head over to nightlightastrology.com. Pick up one of our exclusive rewards. There's a ton of really good stuff, ton of class passes. Our school is just loaded with really good material if you want to grow and study Hellenistic astrology. So check it out. Thank you for being here. Much love to all of you. And there'll be more regular content tomorrow. Another live stream next Tuesday morning on the Venus-Jupiter trine. Maybe one of the more auspicious transits of the year. So we'll see you there. We'll see you here again for that. All right, take it easy, everyone. Bye.